point out this over here. This is kind of nice to see. So that white bust is Corinne Ray Wilson. She was the first woman ever named to the Senate, named in 1930 by Prime Minister Mackenzie King. And you may wonder why it took to 1930 to get a female senator. We weren't allowed to appoint female senators until 1929. There's a famous case called the Persons Case, and up until 1929, women were not considered persons in the full sense of the law. So they fought all the way to the then Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in Canada, and they actually lost. And then they went all the way to they appealed to the Privy Council in London, and they won. And so women were declared fully persons in 1929. And so the first woman appointed was that woman, Corinne Ray Wilson. This person here is James Gladstone. James Gladstone was the first Indigenous senator appointed in 1958 by Prime Minister Diefenbaker. And what's interesting is in 1958 he could vote in the Senate as a senator. He could not vote in general elections because Indigenous Canadians, status Indians as we called them at the time, did not have the right to vote in general elections until 1960. As you can see, everything in the Senate is red because red is the royal color. Red is an expensive color that only the royals could afford. Those three big chairs in the back, that's the one in the front is where the Queen, if she ever comes here, and she has read our speech on the throne 5 times in person, or more likely than not, it's the Governor General reading the speech on the throne, and her husband sits beside her, Prince Philip, or the consort for the Governor General. Now they have those ropes across them there. That might be a new thing that Pierre hasn't seen recently. That's because we had an incident here about a year ago. One of the senators was bringing some Saskatchewan Roughriders football players here, and they may think themselves to be football royalty because only a true monarch is supposed to sit in the throne, or the Governor General, and they decided to sit in that throne and take some maybe inappropriate selfies. The ceiling is made of actual gold. That's actual gold leaf, and it has the symbols of the founding nations of Canada up there. At least we could see them to be in the 1920s. They have all the British nations up there: the Dragon of Wales, the Rampant Lion of Scotland, the 3 Lions of England, the Harp of Ireland, and the Fleur de Lis from France, and I guess the Maple Leafs represent the rest of us. The paintings are from the Lord Beaverbrook collection. They were Lord Beaverbrook was a Canadian who sat on the British War Cabinet. And he commissioned artists to go to the battlefields of Belgium and France to commission these paintings at the end of World War I. I'm told the second painting in here, which actually shows refugees returning from the war, is worth $1.5 million. So this guy is George III. So George III was the king during the American Revolution. And George went a little bit crazy before the end of his reign. They talk about the madness of King George. And George really couldn't handle the functions of the state. And that was a bit of a problem because you still needed a king to do actual functions of the state in the early 1800s. And so they had his son replace him. So his son was George IV. So he had the Prince Regent. So we're talking about the Regency period. We're talking about George as the stand-in king and ultimately the king in his own right after that. Now, George's portrait is right opposite us there. It's the dark, black, almost black portrait there. That's George IV. That's a very accurate, this is a very inaccurate, very made-up portrait of George IV. George was actually our fattest king, and we have had some doozies. King Henry VIII comes to mind. So his hobbies were obviously eating, drinking, philandering.
What does that mean?
Philandering means running around with women. Okay. He liked married women. He actually had a secret wedding to a Catholic woman because she wouldn't be with him unless they were actually married. So he concocted a fake wedding. He was officially married to an actual queen, Queen Caroline. They were together. They got together and they had one child together. They had one daughter together, and then they decided they absolutely hated each other. So he went off to his mistresses. She went off to her messieurs. All would have been well and good until many years later that one child died in childbirth and there was no heir to the British throne. And so he wanted to marry again, get divorced and marry again so that he could have an heir to the British throne. And he really hated Queen Caroline. Let me tell you how much he hated her. When he became king in his own right, she showed up in Westminster Abbey to declare the queen, and he had her barred at sword point, would not let her into the abbey. Didn't matter, she was still the queen. Many years later, Napoleon died, and the king was woken up in the royal bedchamber, and they said, "Your Majesty, your greatest enemy is dead." And she said, "Oh, she is, by God." Oh, good. So anyway, the only way a king could get divorced at that time was to have a trial in the House of Lords. It'd be like having a divorce court in the Senate, because of a law that Papa had passed here. And they had that trial, and the nation sided with her. They liked Queen Caroline a lot better. They weren't paying off her gambling debts, for example. And they also, the Lord sided with her, so that was the one and only queen. He was stuck with her. So when he died, his brother actually came to the throne. Let me show you the brother. He's hiding back here. So William was kind of surprised to become king. William was the third oldest son of George III. He was together with a woman named Dorothea Jordan. They were together for 13 years and had 10 illegitimate children. The only problem with Dorothea is she was an actress. An actress was considered one step above prostitutes. It was not seen as a queenly role at all. And so when surprise, surprise, William became king, they had to get rid of dear Dorothea. And they said, we'll set you up with a pension in Paris, as long as you don't go back into acting and embarrass the throne. But she did go back into acting because one of their sons needed money, and Dad the king was not ponying up. And they did cut her off. But I think history sort of gave her the last laugh. Because her 6 times grandson, or their 6 times grandson, was kind of a big deal in British politics, at least about 2 years ago. His name is David Cameron, and he was the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Because none of these brothers could get it done legitimately, their niece came into the picture. Her name is Alexandrina. Here, let's go over here. Let's try to go through here. Kind of see it through there anyway. But so I'll tell you a bit about the Victoria painting. So that's Queen Victoria. We'll over afterwards and get a better shot of it too. That painting is cursed. That painting has been in 4 buildings, and all 4 of those buildings have burnt to the ground. And it's already been in this building when we had our fire, so I think we're good. They're about to move that painting to the Senate, the new Senate, when they move the building at the end of the year. So I'm a bit worried about. They had better put a fire extinguisher right next to it. That's the Queen's father. So he's just kind of the stand-in king. If you saw the movie The King's Speech, this is what they call him first played in the movie. He had the stammer. I think the stress of World War II, the depression, having to do public speaking, led to his untimely demise. And so he died in 1952. The Queen Mum never really forgave her brother-in-law for having abdicated. I see they're about to be relocated to the Senate. That's why they're in the new building. That's why they're not here anymore. I don't think anybody has credibly suggested that Queen Elizabeth cheated on her husband, Philip. Philip, on the other hand, I think it's pretty well been established there were affairs early on in their marriage. At least the miniseries The Crown is pretty well convinced that that he cheated on her. He's 97 now, so I'm hoping he's slowed down. Those are not just any old kings; those are the actual monarchs. So it goes Victoria, Edward, George, Edward, George again, George. Elizabeth. And you look over here. What do we got here? Square blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got 8 blocks left. So lots of room. The monarchy can go on for that's like 200 years. Speakers of the Senate, and 3 of them here I like to call the impossible paintings. This is Dan Hayes from Southern Alberta, where I'm from Calgary. And I don't care how you get in Parliament Hill, it's very hard to see the Rocky Mountains. Yeah. He had them put up there, which I think is wonderful. Gildas Logan is in Manitoba, so therefore the plains of Manitoba behind him. And this is Romeo LeBlanc, father of our current minister, Dominic LeBlanc. And that seems right around the corner. I can show you exactly where that is. Exactly, that is the lighthouse of Shadiac, New Brunswick, where he's from. Exactly. It's quite lovely.
Paintings are nice.
They all got to choose their own artists. The 1970s were a scary time for art.
Were they ever?
It's probably the scariest portrait is this one. This is Renaud Lepointe.
Is that with Crayolas?
Seems to be. And she was our last female speaker. We haven't had a female speaker since 79, 78? Can't remember, 79. And so some of the people asked me, well, why did women have to wear the frills around their neck and their wrist? And I said, well, so did the men in the early days. So I would argue that a female speaker would not have to wear that regalia anymore, but we haven't tested that there since 1979. So actually, I'll show you. There's a couple of Trompe-l'oeil. There's fake stone. It's called Tyndall Limestone. It's all quarried just outside of Winnipeg. It came in by train, and it's all highly fossilated. So these they call it tapestry limestone. It's got that little woven pattern to it there, and that is all in that case the plant life that fossilized. All the railway.
Yeah.
So this is the Railway Committee room. The Railway Committee must have been a big deal in the early 1920s when we reopened the building. We don't even have a Railway Committee anymore. We have a Transport Committee. this is set up like a committee. That's how a parliamentary committee sits when they hear from witnesses. That painting there is the Fathers of Confederation, obviously. It's a recreation, the original burnt in the fire of 1916. We painted it again, but it turned out to be a good thing. We'd left out 3 Fathers of Confederation in the original painting, so we got to add them there. And as a tribute to the artist of the original painting, he's hanging on the wall there, Richard Harris hanging on the wall. The guy in the middle is obviously John A. Macdonald, so I should probably give you a couple of John A. Macdonald stories while we're here. You may be shocked to learn that John A. Macdonald was a bit of a drinker. Some would say an alcoholic even. And the one concession he'd make to his alcoholism is that he liked bourbon, that was his favorite drink, but he would drink gin in the House of Commons because it looks like water. And in fact, to this day, it's a common joke to play on the finance minister when they're giving the most important speech of the year, is to trade out the glass.
Story.
Yeah.
So many times.
Put in some vodka or gin or whatever. So a smart finance minister now walks into the House of Commons on budget day holding their water glass like this. keeps a close eye on it. There's one story about Johnny Macdonald was debating his opponent in Kingston, his riding, and he had a hangover that morning because, of course, he had a hangover. He had a hangover every morning. And his opponent had just spoken at the podium, and then it was John A.'s turn. And John A. got to the podium, and he steadied himself, and then he threw up. He vomited all over the podium. That would normally be the end of anyone else's political career, but not witty John A. He just wiped his mouth. He said, "I'm terribly sorry, but it's not the drink that makes me sick. It's him, my opponent." And everyone laughed and laughed, and Johnny got elected. He lost one election his entire career. And it took the Pacific scandal, a $300,000 bribe that the Conservative Party accepted. The book beside him there, the big portfolio, is Thomas Darcy McGee. And that's why I wanted to go to Darcy McGee's for lunch. So Darcy McGee was the first political assassination victim in Canada. It was April 7th, 1868. Canada had not even been a country for a year yet. And McGee had been speaking in Parliament, 2 o'clock in the morning. He was walking home to his rooming house. His rooming house is what I pointed out earlier, where the subway and the esthetician is on Sparks Street there, corner of O'Connor and Sparks. He was rattling the lock to the door, and the landlady heard him rattling the door, and she got up to open the door, and she was thrown back by a shotgun blast. Someone had come up behind McGee and shot him in the back of the head. And the shot was so powerful that his false teeth went flying 30 feet
Oh my gosh.
and embedded themselves into the wall. McGee went tumbling over. Her son was a page in Parliament, was coming around the corner just in time to see the gunman go running down an open-air alleyway. And they picked up a guy for the crime, a guy named James Patrick Whalen. He was a Fenian. Fenians were essentially Irish terrorists who were agitating for Ireland to be separate from the British Empire at the time. And the trial was not going very well for the prosecution. They only had circumstantial evidence. They found a gun that had gone off in his rooming house. He says the cleaning lady did it. You know that old story, right? The cleaning lady fired my gun, right? But the trial was not going really well. And so John A. Macdonald, the Prime Minister, they really wanted a conviction. So he went and sat next to the judge with his wife in the courthouse to remind the jury that a conviction was desired. And they got one, and the last public hanging in Canada actually took place here in Ottawa at the old Ottawa jail, where they hung Whalen for the crime of assassinating Darcy McGee. It's now the youth hostel, so you can actually go stay on death row. So if you want an
They turned it into an
interesting place to
It's right by the River Mall.
Dad, speaking of gunshots, the door.
I will. I'll get there.
That's right.
And so, I don't recommend it. I think the staff moves your bag in the middle of the night, so I wouldn't recommend going to stay out. This room is where the NDP used to have its caucus. The second largest party meets here every Wednesday. So it's the Conservatives that meet here now. The NDP used to meet here. So on the day when we had the shooting here in the building, October 22nd, 2014, the NDP members were like about 100 NDP members. When the banging started, one of the guards came running, an unarmed guard, Constable Gervais, brave fellow. He knew that door was unlocked, so he came and he closed the door, braced it like this, so in case anyone tried to come in. And we later discovered we have a bit of a souvenir in the building here. This is a bullet hole right here. One of the bullets,
Oh my
the
gosh.
oak door didn't stop it. This door stopped it.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if they're stealing these doors or not, but whatever it is, it managed to stop a bullet. And that's small caliber, so that would have been one of the security forces' bullets. Coming across. But it went right to the oak. You can see where they patched the oak door there. And then this door stopped here.
So they're not going to patch this?
I don't think so. I think a lot of the MPs think, unless it's structurally necessary, why
Spend
do
the
it?
money?
Yeah. Well, just more so that it's the history of the building. Like why, it happened, so people should be aware of it. So this is the room that the Conservatives, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet were all in that room over there, and that's a bullet now wedged in the wall there. It's another little addition we have to the building. They don't point that out on the regular tour. So that's the committee room that they were in. You may have heard the story that the RCMP were going to take Harper out the back door, out the loading dock, out of the building. When they opened the door, the bang is getting louder because it's coming down this hallway towards the library. And so instead, they decided to. I don't blame them. They threw him in a closet. So for 15 minutes, he was in a closet, which would be kind of freaky. He was right here behind the pillar.
Oh.
Kind of looked like this.
Multiple shots.
So those are, but around the door, you'll see this door a little bit up here. This is all bullets.
Yeah.
Bullet. There's a big one there. They patched. Yeah, bullet. They're all bullets. Bullet. And actually, the door was opening up, and bullets were hitting the circulation desk.
Oh my gosh.
The librarians, of course, knew how
He
to.
was nailed right here.
Yeah. These doors, by the way, these are actually iron doors.
Yeah.
And that's what protected the library from a big fire. I was actually walking to the cafeteria the day of the shooting, and they said, get it off, so I got in with Judy Foote, who was then house leader, I guess, for the
Like
Liberals.
the moment you stepped out the elevator back.
I was walking right about there, and they said, get in office. And she was cool as a cucumber, and she said, well, I better tell Trudeau there's been a shooting, right? Because Trudeau was here. He was right. No, his office was here. And so we had a big fancy office for him right down the end of the hallway, but it's kind of impractical because the reception for that office is wherever the flag is there, the flagpole. So it's kind of weird. So Trudeau liked to be near his staff, so he took this office right here. That's not very big. It's goes to about here. There's normally a staff office, but he liked it, so that was Justin Trudeau's office until he became Prime Minister. Of the house, the only guys allowed to legally stay overnight in the building. I say legally, it probably happens all the time, but he had the bedroom. He has a suite down here. These are portraits of all the speakers of the house. You may recognize this baby-faced guy. If there is a fire, I might go try to save the painting in the Senate, the one I pointed out, the $1.5 million. Might try my hand at saving Victoria for the fifth time. There's a very valuable book under Parliament, under the Library of Parliament, the Ottawa book. It's a large book, they call it elephant portfolio of bird images. It's hand colored. Extremely rare. Well, 120 of them left in the world, and the last time one sold at auction, it sold for $14 million Canadian. And so it is, if you were to Google most valuable printed book in the world, it is the Audubon book. Or I might try to find out how much that bust weighs there, because it's pretty valuable, and it's not really because of what it is. You can see it's a gift to Canada from a grateful France. So France gave this to Canada after World War I. Thank you. Exactly. You see, if you read that plaque there, Rodin. So if you've never touched a Rodin in your life before,
I will touch this one.
I think you should.
You actually can't do that in France.
There were 66,000 Canadians who gave their lives serving during World War I. Quite a contribution for a country of Canada's size in the early 20th century. It would be the equivalent of, say, 300,000 people. And most of them were nurses. There were 45 nurses that died serving during World War I. There's one very tragic story of a hospital ship that got torpedoed. The hospital ship was called Landover Castle, and it was kind of outrageous to torpedo a hospital ship. They were well marked, and yet one got torpedoed near Liverpool, and 14 nurses lost their lives. One vile act like that. So it became a bit of a rallying cry during World War I. We're doing it for Landover Castle and the nurses that had died. They thought it didn't make sense to actually put in a stained glass window. So that's not actually there. That's a mirage. That's a sticker of a deco. It's not there yet, but it will be one day with actual stained glass window. They probably do another one over here. When an eminent guest come, they have the red carpet go down the Hall of Honor. They have a guest book right here, and important why find the guest book. So you name it, Barack Obama. I shook Bill Clinton's hand right over there.
Oh, nice.
I shook Tony Blair's hand. Nelson Mandela. became a summer job. She was basically Prime Minister for 4 months in the summer of 1993. Hey, I know you see you. How are things? That's a living legend right there. Wow. I'd love to see you. Jane's here. This is the only painting that lights itself here. This is Jean Chrétien. You know how dark the hallway was, so he chose that. Vivid color in the back. Pierre Trudeau. When the artist was doing Pierre Trudeau's female artist, and she said, I need something more dramatic. You were known for your style, your flair, your panache, Pierre Trudeau. So she took her winter coat and put it around his shoulders and gave him her gloves. So that's Pierre Trudeau wearing a lady's coat. Invented peacekeeping, which he got the Nobel Peace Prize, the only Canadian state to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And with the only minority government caught as the flag and Medicare, and student loans, and the Auto Pact, and you name it, the Order of Canada. And yet, look how humble he is. He's sitting down in his frame. Still need to go 2/3 up the frame here. This is our Temple of Democracy. This is the House of Commons. So it's all green. Green because, well, we know for sure green because it's green over in Westminster in London. But I think green because the commoners used to sit outside. Commoners used to sit outside in the grass in the early days. There's an old story in maybe it's true in Westminster that the leader of the office of the Prime Minister are 2 sword lengths apart, so they couldn't stab each other. And you can see here, it's a bit more than 2 sword lengths, about 4 meters. So I like to say in Canada, it's 2 hockey sticks apart. can't slash each other. I think it's very appropriate.
No body checking.
Exactly. The big green chair is for the Speaker of the Senate, and the Prime Minister sits in a regular chair, like everyone else. His is 11 seats in, so if you want to count that, just on the other side of the clock, actually, is where the Prime Minister sits. And then the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Scheer, sits directly across. At one point, that was the center of the House.
Okay.
And now it's sort of expanded a bit more here.
Or something.
You can see they've actually added additional seats here. They actually have these 5-person benches near the back here, where they can fit people. These busts here, by the way, I think should be moved out there where more people can see them. Because normally this is closed off in the working hours. This is only the MPs can come back here and their staff. Journalists can't come back here. So that's Ellen Fairclough, the first cabinet minister, appointed by John Dees Baker in the 1950s. And this woman here is Agnes Campbell McPhail, the first female MP elected in 1921. Can you imagine what it'd be like to be here with less than, inspired and feminist men here in 1950? We had a gunman, actually a bomber, come here in the 1960s.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He was sitting in the gallery here, and he got up to light his bomb, and he just timed things. There's a washroom right here. That first door is a washroom, and he mistimed things, and he blew up the washroom, killed himself. Had he made it back, question period was going on. Prime Minister Lester Pearson, the opposition John Dees Baker, and he was sitting right over Tommy Douglas.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this is a very good shot of the Commons there too. If you want a nice photo. That's Justin Trudeau's office. Limestone, marble, more marble, fake marble. Okay, it looks like marble. That's wood. It's wood. It's painted wood.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's fake. Now, that has nothing to do with the current occupant of the office. Part of it down here. You see these sort of dome-shaped areas there. You have to be careful where you sit because they have a bit of an acoustic effect. And if you sit in the wrong place, it makes it so that someone could be sitting like 30 feet away and it sounds like they're talking right in your ear. If you know what you're doing, if you want to listen to someone's conversation and they're
You
sitting
just sit there?
in the target place,
It's a very noisy.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
bounces around the alcove.
And you see these jackets here. So gentlemen have to wear a jacket. So one of those ugly jackets is available. Private room that the ministers, prime ministers, MPs can book for private
Meetings.
luncheon, right? So. You see the falls over there. That's called the Chaudière Falls. Little rapids area there. And they're doing a building development around it. It'd be much easier to visit them in the future. And then the hills, that's called the Gatineau Hills, the little escarpment there. That's the white buildings due straight here. The tallest tower is the casino. So if people like a casino, there's a great one there. Climbs up set of stairs to change the flag. And I actually did it one day with the flag master.
Oh, cool.
And you walk up this ladder at the top and you hop up the roof there in a hurry. So this is where Trudeau came today. It was a beige building. It's called the Langevin Building. So most of his staff work there. The building here that has the 3 banners on it, the little white building, that's the old American Embassy. And this Prime Minister recently gave it to the Indigenous people of Canada to do with what they want. And over here you see the West Block and the glass dome there. That is going to be the new House of Commons.
Oh, very
starting in
nice.
January there.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that.
And then there's the Centennial Flame, which is not the eternal flame, it goes out all the time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And the Senate is going to be over here. See the building with the pillars there? That is the old train station. That's going to be the new Senate. It's the Charles Lynch Press Theatre. Charles Lynch was a war correspondent, columnist, longtime publicist. Workshop.
So how far are we down? How many?
80 feet below ground.
80 feet.
It goes all the way to the east block, right? The west block.
You can. West Block's going to connect up in here. So this is that's what shows you the results from this digital mapping where they had these little checkerboard shapes. I know where every beam is. The map's here actually. So if you want, so we're here. We're CBIS underneath. Okay, and so they're building an underground screening center right there, which will also go down 80 feet. Okay, and that way, when you go to West Block in the future, you'll be screened there to go in the building. And then we'll also work over here. But there are tunnels going. There's a tunnel going there. There's a tunnel going here. There's a tunnel going there and there. These are all sort of the bottles will be locked in here, right?
Yeah.
And then they unlock enough for you to take out one bottle. But they unlock immediately, so you can't take out several bottles or whatever. It's infamous because it's been here since the 60s. It's sort of hidden away. You have to know where to find it. I believe it's here because John Turner's wife wanted it.
Oh.
Because she's famous for not doing an event unless she has Coke.
Well, there you go.
You have to give her Coke in the glass bottles. I was once doing a tour once with Pat Sorbera, and Pat Sorbera said, yeah, I did an event at the Guelph House once, and the Turners were out sitting outside in the car. And they wouldn't. Turner wouldn't come in until I got her freshly bottled Coke.
A bottle of Coke.
Rodrigue Blaker, he's a Liberal member from Quebec, La Chine, this is writing. And early 1980s, so of course there's no emails, no text messages at that time. And so your memos would come in paper form several times a day. And the messenger would have a skeleton key, a master key, and could walk in the door and drop off her memos. And one day a young female messenger came to this office and walked in the door and let herself in and caught Mr. Blaker having sex with his assistant. The messenger had enough good sense to leave and start walking and running down the hallway. And the reason she was running is because Mr. Blaker came out after her, buck naked. I don't know why, to explain, to tell her not to tell anyone, to invite her in, I don't know. But anyway, she eventually got away, and eventually Mr. Blaker came back to his office. And in the meantime, his paramour was probably a bit embarrassed, and she'd quickly gotten dressed and left the office, locking the door behind her. Because these doors, as you know, if you don't unlock them, they stay locked, exactly. And so Mr. Blaker had to find the nearest guard to let him in the office. And if he was lucky, the nearest guard would be around here, 50 feet around that way. If it was after hours, the nearest guard would be where you came in with the
Main entrance.
And so, hello, I seem to have left my keys in my office. Can you kind of help me? And so I first heard the story because the guards would tell and retell the story. But I wanted to make sure it was true before I would tell it on a tour like this. And first of all, it is absolutely true. I found it. Second of all, Mr. Blaker, as I explained earlier, was the deputy speaker of the House of Commons. He probably had this office because it's pretty close to the chamber, just up the stairs there. And I love the sense of humor of his constituents because they circulated a petition to change his title from Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons to Deputy Streaker. Oh, no, exactly.